Thanks so much for inviting me to talk about this. This is something that kind of came out of my weekend thinking, and the more I explored, the more I really got into it. And so I thought it'd be something great to share with everybody today. So I won't spend too much time on my introduction. I think you did a great job. I'm Chris O'Brien. I'm a design principal at ExxonMobil. And I really did just kind of want to share why I think that architects are the original experienced designers. So I started my design career working in environmental graphic design. So we designed environments for retail stores and car dealers, museums, hospitals, just to name a few. And the people I worked with were, as you can see, incredibly creative, but they often had a degree or were in school for architecture, or they had some kind of architectural background. And this is where my interest was first piqued in learning more about architecture and what goes along with it. And so it was after that I started to notice architecture in movies, right? And how it helped tell the story, how architecture was used to show scale or establish a hierarchy, how it communicated different messages like loneliness or brutality. And then I would read about all the different incredible architecture from around the world. And I was even lucky enough to have an opportunity to visit some of these locations. But it was in looking closer at domestic architecture that I started to think about the homes and the people that lived in them. And I began thinking about the architects that designed those homes. And that's when I had my aha moment. I bet that architects were the original user experience designers. You see, they think about people who will be living in these homes. They talk to them about what they want in a home, and then they go about meeting those needs in different ways. They think about the experience of a space, how a person moves through it, what utility it serves, and how aesthetics play a part in it. And so then I went down a rabbit hole, and I'm going to take you with me for a little bit. So just be patient. But imagine with me the evolution of home design. In the beginning, it was simply a hut, right? It provided shelter. It was a purely functional dwelling. It was all about utility. But now you look at the modern home and it's grown into multiple rooms, each serving their own purpose, sleeping, cooking, bathing, and each being designed to meet the needs of the individuals living in it. The modern architect works with their clients to identify their needs and problems that need solving. Then the architect designs the home, defining the spaces and their utility. For example, a living room might be where the family can gather. But is the focal point a fireplace? Is it a media center? Or is it a scenic view of the woods outside? These are all questions that can only be answered by the people using the space. The space is created with the users in mind. The space is to be experienced and interacted with. And so how does this correlate with UX? Well, quite simply, architecture delivers a physical object while UX delivers a digital product. Now, I know UX can deliver much more than just a digital product, but for the sake of this session, I'm going to focus on digital products. And so now let's look at the evolution of the computer. In the beginning, it was simply a command line interface, purely a functional way of interfacing with a computer. Type a command, said command executes. But now look at where we are. The graphical user interface was created, and the rest is history. Now, modern software and applications have grown into working on multiple devices and interfaces, all serving their own purpose. Apps for fitness, for groceries, for banking, for our cars, even for dating. And each being designed to meet the needs of the individuals using it. Just like architecture, it's all about the people using the software. So after seeing these similarities, I wanted to see if there were any more. Specifically, I wanted to see about the architect's process and compare it to the UX process. So as many of you probably already know, the UX process is made up half of research, half of design. And then those are further divided into what we like to call the 4 Ds: discover, define, design, and deliver. I find this double diamond to be a helpful way of thinking of the UX process. And what I uncovered was that architects share a very similar process. there are similarities that are worth calling out and some additional things that I think we can learn from them and add to our own process. And so we start with the discover phase. And they have a very similar discover phase to ourselves. They begin with meeting with the client. The meeting isn't just about gathering a list of things the client wants. It's about hearing what they like and don't like. It's about hearing their thoughts about the environment and the ideas that they have. How do they see the space being used? They often walk the site where they want to build with the client giving impressions and ideas. This isn't something that can just be done over the phone. And in the UX world, we do the same with our clients. We often have two clients, right? The stakeholders and then those who will be actually using our products. And so we have to meet with our stakeholders to hear about what they want, but we also meet with the people who will be using our products. We want to hear about what they want. What are their goals and their needs? What problems do they need our products to help solve? Our job is to find where the user's needs and the business needs overlap. And we have different methods for this. We do stakeholder interviews and stakeholder mapping. There's field observations, ethnographic studies. We build scenarios and empathy maps. These are all methods that we use. Then the architect moves into doing what's called a site analysis. This is the process of evaluating a particular location's physical and social characteristics. During the site analysis, they're looking at the location, neighboring buildings, structures. They're looking at access points, restrictions, and hazards. There are a lot of things to consider before you start to design, and this is true in the UX world as well. We have just as much to consider with a digital product. Where will people be using this product? Now, where I work, we think about, is it at a gas pump? Is it in a refinery? Is it up on a scaffolding? Is it behind a desk? Is it indoor? Is it outdoor? What are they using? When are they using it? Is it at night, day? Is it a high stress situation? Is there high distractions? And what technology do they have access to? Is there a smartphone, low bandwidth, desktop only, no Wi-Fi? What limitations are they dealing with, both physical and digital? And it's after the discovery stage that the architect then moves into the define phase. And they start with what they call the big idea. It's called partie. Partie signifies the architect's overall guiding idea for the design. It's fuzzy in the beginning, and it's meant to be. Partie typically has less to do with technical, financial, and utilitarian issues and more to do with view or massing, scale, transparency, opaqueness, and other architectural issues. Now, I could spend a good portion of this just talking about partie. It can be hard to grasp, but I think I have some examples that might help give us a better understanding of what exactly that is, what partie is. And the example that I find to be helpful is the concept of making your kitchen match the greenery outside. It can be about the surroundings and how they interact with the building, or how the structure itself interacts or elevates above its surroundings. It could be like Falling Water. Falling Water is a famous house designed by the architect Frank Lloyd Wright in rural southwestern Pennsylvania. It's a well integrated into the environment and appears to be built into a small waterfall. Its partie can be described by the well-known Frank Lloyd Wright quote, "No house should ever be on a hill or on anything. It should be of the hill, belonging to it." And so what does partie look like in product design? Well, it can be an integrated product, maybe across multiple technologies. Or maybe it's a baking website that looks so good you want to eat it. It could be a specific illustration style, or maybe it's new wearable technology. But partie is that guiding idea in the beginning for the design that then needs further fleshing out in what's called the design concept. The design concept is where the overall design begins to come more into focus. A strong architecture concept gives the architect a clear direction and framework when making design decisions. It provides a methodology to the thinking process by offering a type of rule book. And the concept is not just the structure, not just the building itself. It's the landscape around it. It's the colors, the styles, fixtures, finishes, the materials that will be used. And in the UX design concept is very similar. All the work that's been done up to this point come together and informs the work going forward. This is where the research from the first diamond starts to merge with that second diamond. And we start to design. And what I like about this part of the architect's process is that it relies on two of my favorite things. That's learning and doing. The architect relies on their knowledge to guide the craft of doing and making. It's what the Greeks call episteme and techne. These are the fancy words that you get to take away from today's session. Well, these and party. But architects are always reading and learning about the materials they're working with. They study people and how they interact with each other and how they interact with their environments. And so do we. As a designer, I love learning about new mental models and interaction patterns. And while I believe designers do not necessarily need to know how to code, there's a big discussion around this, I won't get into it, but I do believe they need to know about the code itself. Just as an architect needs to know about the different materials she'll be working with, wood, steel, concrete, so does the UX professional need to know about APIs, Angular, React, and the myriad of other technologies that are out there. And again, knowing about the people and how they interact with products and their surroundings. It's not a coincidence that quite a few UX professionals come from an anthropology background. Architects also start with sketching. I love this part of the process. And as you can see, there's all kinds of levels of fidelity. Sometimes it's just a scribble to get the idea out of the head and onto paper, while others are more precise, communicating more about the final design. And the same is true for the UX process, or at least I think it should be. I know in our modern times, we're able to jump right into Figma or Adobe XD, but there's something to be said about starting with pen and paper. I like sketching because I'm a firm believer that the fidelity of your design should match the fidelity of your thought. Don't jump right into a detailed design. Give yourself time to experiment with different styles and different approaches. I think this quote says it quite well from Eric Reinhold of 30 by 40 Design Workshop. Architectural design is iterative. Everything you do builds on your previous work as you develop a deeper understanding of the issues affecting the design. You'll start rough, refine, retool, rework. And that's when you see them moving into architectural models. This is a new level of detailed design. And as someone who has trouble putting together IKEA furniture, I'm amazed at the talent and skill that goes into these models. And it makes perfect sense on why they do it. There's no other way to see their design before it's built. Even in 3D software, one struggles to feel how the design is. And the same applies to prototypes in UX. They are quick and easy ways to learn about our designs. They provide a way for us to see how people interact and use what we're designing. They also provide a way for us to see our work. I can tell you that there's been a few occasions when I've been working on a design on the computer that I thought was great, but then when I used it on the phone, realized that it wasn't going to work. And as you can see, prototypes come in all shapes and sizes. Just because it's a digital product, it doesn't mean it has to be a digital prototype. And then we move into the deliver phase. Hearing about how architects and engineers work together, I was happy to see that it wasn't much different than how designers work with developers. It's a yin and yang relationship. Sure, there's times when we butt heads, but it isn't out of anger. Well, not most of the time, but out of what is best for the product. Just like with architecture, we need to engage with the engineers early and often to ensure that what we are designing is structurally sound. And while diagrams and floor plans are handy from a design perspective, you need technical drawings to build from. We've all seen at one point in our lives that classic blueprint drawing, right? And just as there's blueprints to build from, there are design specs to develop from. These cut down on misunderstandings and time wasted from back and forth and how the design should look and work. Now, these days, design specs are automated through plugins and different software. But there was a time when this was a manual exercise for every design a designer worked on. It was tedious work, I can tell you that much. But it was better than there being no specs at all. And the developer was left guessing, what's the distance between the form fields and the buttons and the labels? And so, as we've seen, the design process for an architect and a UX professional aren't that different. And there's a lot to be learned from digging in deeper into the work that each does. And so, to wrap up, I want to share a quote with you from, well, you guessed it, it's an architect. You employ stone, wood, and concrete, and with these materials, you build houses and palaces. That is construction. Ingenuity is at work. But suddenly you touch my heart. You do me good. I am happy, and I say, this is beautiful. That is architecture. Now, this may sound a little fuzzy or a bit esoteric, but I think it's important to stop and ask ourselves, how do we think about design? Oftentimes, I encounter people who are simply thinking about the construction of the software or an app. What technology can I use? What kind of features can I include? How fast can I get this done? And how can I avoid spending more money than I have to? And if we are to just focus on these things, then we will merely be constructing products. So let's think about the difference between construction and architecture. It's rather easy to simply construct a building where people will go to work every day, sitting in their cubicle maze. Where I work, shown on the right of this slide, this is our campus in Houston, and it's quite different from the standard office building you see on the left. You see, the campus was created with people in mind. It was created for chance encounters and spontaneous interactions. It was designed so that innovation and collaboration can occur. This was the party, the big idea. And to achieve this, there was a process that was followed and a craft involved that elevates it above just construction. It goes beyond just a place where people go to work, more than just an office. The same is true for the products we are creating. They are more than just products that we construct to make the company money. They are products that improve the lives of our employees and of our customers. Uncovering these needs and designing the products that meet these needs requires a process, requires a craft and a skill. And this is how we elevate our products beyond simply being constructed. We elevate them to being products that solve problems, that improve lives, and that bring delight. So thank you for listening. I have a couple references for those of you who are interested in maybe learning more about architecture. And I'm happy also to answer any questions you might have now.
Awesome. Thank you very much, Chris. That was really interesting kind of analogy or syncing of the two. But the thing that came to my mind, I love those TV shows where they've got the architect transforming a house. And what I always take from it is architects don't care about your budget. They are going to do it. So
yeah, it's true. It's true. And I'd love to live in that world, but we all have those constraints.
yeah, no. Hopefully, it's not advocating for that aspect of architecture. But as Chris did say, please do send in any questions that you have, be it on UXDX or YouTube, LinkedIn, whichever platform that you're watching this on, and we will put those questions through to Chris. I have a question, though, to get started, and it's something that I'm seeing a lot more, that as we move away from, let's say, the big project and the big plan up front to where we're doing much smaller, quick, iterative releases, is there a time for party, or do you like, are you constantly just kind of iterating on, if we were to take an analogy of a building, are you just building wall by wall, door by door, window by window, and not really getting the ability to step back and look at it in its environment?
Yeah, I recognize the aspirational nature of Parti, and it's something that I wish I could say that I'm doing on a daily basis or even on a project basis. But it is true as we move into working on all different types of applications that we don't really have that opportunity. But I think still in a small scale, we can still try to apply some of that, even if it wasn't created at the beginning of the project. Is there some small way that we can apply it, whether it be the little features that we're trying to add to it that are already in the backlog, or maybe we're out trying to discover what other needs our customers have, and how to add that. But it is a I think that's one of those, every so often you'll land on a project like that where you get to have this big idea at the beginning. But I also recognize too that on a day-to-day basis it is hard to come by.
And is there any, because from my experience, I land a lot more on the existing legacy product and that we're just
Yeah.
moving forward with rather than the greenfields. Is there anything that you would recommend that somebody would do to, how do you try to take that step back and examine, like, so yes, you've got your legacy, you've got what's already
Yeah.
there, but how do you move forward?
I think it's never too late to come up with a vision, right? I think a lot of products really do lack that, lack like a vision statement, right? So what is the UX vision? I think that's always a good thing to have a project team rally around. And then from that kind of helps guide. That's your North Star that you're able to design around. And I think it helps too, even from a project standpoint, right? Because from a business standpoint, it might be all just, kind of financials and customers and, how do we get more? And it's just very, numbers driven. And then from a development standpoint, maybe it's, for them, it's just kind of getting in there, grinding out the code, getting it to work, right? And so to have this vision that a team can kind of rally around, I think that has such a positive impact on the work that we do. And I think that's a fantastic way to really start to add some of this that kind of gets that falls to the side often.
Excellent. No, I fully agree. I love the concept of a vision that people can aim towards. I think it's really empowering and inspiring.
Yeah,
Um, how does somebody, so your quote that you kind of finished on, where anybody can build a building, but I can't remember, I'm paraphrasing now,
yeah,
there's a difference between good architecture. How do you
yeah,
get skill set? How do you go from um, kind of just being, as you're starting your career maybe, or what are the things that
yeah.
you should be doing to become that next level?
Yeah, I think that's a part of, start. I think back to my own career, and that really was in the beginning. I was just trying to get things to work. I was just trying to make sure that the functional piece was there, and then you start to better understand who you're designing for, and I think that's a critical piece is really getting out of our own head and better learning about the people that we're designing for. It's from there that you're able to kind of stretch beyond just your own interest or the interests of others too, and always staying in touch with what's going on out in the industry. I find to steal from Austin Kleon, we want to steal like an artist, right? And so always looking for that kind of inspiration to see what other people are doing, because you do reach a point where I think to use kind of this construction analogy of you've been constructing things, right? And there's a true craft there, right? So in the quote, he says ingenuity is at work, right? And so it's a very positive thing. But then to take it that step further, right? After that, after you become comfortable with the construction of the piece, after you become comfortable with the technologies that you're using or who you're designing for, right? As you learn more, and I think that goes back to kind of that episteme and techne, right? Those two go hand in hand, and you can't just have one or the other. They really build off of each other, and I feel like they kind of, as you get better at one, you realize you've fallen behind a little bit on the other, and so it's this constant kind of back and forth between the two. But like most things, it's really time. It's time and how you spend it.
Excellent. And it's going to bring me, I think we've time for just one last question. And I guess it's future gazing, so we don't know the answer.
Yeah,
But for me, because when you mentioned designers don't need to code, I'm thinking about how advanced level 1 of Copilot and Ghostwriter and those kind of code writing AIs are. Like,
yeah,
they're pretty powerful now. So level 2 or 3 is going to be very powerful. But
yes,
where do you, if you take away, so the equivalent that I've seen from a design perspective is where you can give a prompt and it will lay out kind of pages for you. So
sure,
if we move away, like you said, from redlining, doing it manually, to the systems automatically doing it, and they're going to take
yeah,
over a little bit more of what we do, how
right.
do you think people are going to get to that level if you're taking away the kind of the lower level pieces that they're doing?
Yeah, yeah, that's the big conversation right now is AI taking over everything, and I think it's a tool like everything else, right? I think it's going to be to our advantage at first. It might be a little threatening, but I think there's more to it out there, right? And it's there's some things that can be easily laid out and have it do that work for you, but it frees you up, right? It frees you up to those bigger challenges. And that's one thing, at least from my standpoint, a lot of the times we get pulled in from people who think we just do interface work, right? And so our complaint is, well, we haven't had time to do this upfront work, right? So that's what I'm always saying is that research informs the design, right? So it's one thing to plug something in and say, hey, I need a login screen into AI, right? But it's what's that work up front, right? So the login screen, that's a small piece in what we do, right? And it's near the end of our process, but it's that beginning, that understanding that we're trying to do. That I see that as something that's going to free us up to do more of that work.
Excellent. Yeah, no, I agree. AIs can spit out what's existing, but they don't know what's new. At
Right.
this current generation, at least.
Yes. Yeah.
um, that brings us to time. So thank you very much, Chris, for sharing. I really enjoyed that, and I hope everybody out there did as well.
Yeah. Thanks so much for having me. This was great.